Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Leslie Alistad, and I am your Wellness Through Mindfulness host for tonight's talk and meditation. I am part of the committee for Wellness Through Mindfulness as well as one of the teachers. Wellness Through Mindfulness is a local Calgary group that is dedicated to presenting information for you about mindfulness and practices that you can do. We have been inviting local Calgary practitioners and teachers for the last 5 to 6 years. We started at Shaganappi Community Center, and then we did take a pause at the beginning of the pandemic. We weren't sure what to do. And then we partnered with the Calgary Public Library and started presenting online. So we present every first and third Thursday. And we're very glad that we've been able to make this partnership with the Calgary Public Library. It's been a very fruitful partnership, and we're appreciative as well. I want to express my appreciation to Maya for hosting this evening. We do have a website, I believe it is posted in the chat, and that is where you can find videos, the copies of the videos of these talks and guided meditations, as well as some written information and some resources that you could use to learn more about mindfulness. And then I wanted to comment on the topics that are coming up. You would have seen them in the posters. On February 17th, Dr. Phil Bluestein is going to speak about gratitude, negitude, or alitude. And his description is, it's easy to experience gratitude for what makes us happy. How do we develop a skillful relationship with all of our experience? And then he poses this question, what is post-traumatic growth? On March 3rd, I will be talking about the mindful connection to the beautiful. Practicing mindfulness opens us up to profound states of well-being, and this well-being can make us more sensitive to the beautiful. When we are able to behold beauty without clinging to it, we can open to a natural source of well-being. So in this guided meditation and talk, we will explore mindfully connecting to the beautiful. And I would like to introduce Stacy Madden, who is giving the talk this evening. She is somebody who I have taken some courses with, weekend course and an 8-week course, and found her teaching very helpful. So I personally recommend her. She's got many different educations, so I'm just going to mention some of them if you're curious where she's coming from. She's a registered somatic movement educator, a trauma-informed yoga and meditation teacher trainer, and a pelvic health professional. She's certified in mind-body therapy, somatic experiencing, interpersonal neurobiology, and movement for trauma. She offers a whole person inclusive approach to emotional health and physical well-being. She blends a rich tapestry of modalities and practical experience and endeavors to share what it means to be an integrated and embodied human. And we have posted her website, I think. It's stacymadden.com. And I'm very much looking forward to Stacy's talk, and we'll be together. I'll be with you again in the question and answer period, and pass it over to Stacy now.
Thank you, Leslie. That was lovely. Now that I've unmuted myself, I really appreciate being invited to be a part of this evening and this group and this topic. So everything that I'm going to speak about or offer tonight is simply an invitation for all of you to explore and consider and perhaps try. Nothing is a directive here. Everything's just an invitation. I've created a slide set that, upon reconsideration, looks like it could probably be like a 2-hour workshop. So I'll probably skim through the most important parts, skim through the slides, land on the most important parts of the slides, and then we'll do some embodied practices at the end if you feel so called to do that. Something else I would like to mention before we begin is something that I've been practicing for the last 2 or 3 years now, and it was passed on to me from a teacher. And that's the practice of tequanimity. So, a little bit of a joke there. From yoga and mindfulness practices where we practice equanimity. In these times, we're practicing tequanimity. So what that means is, if your internet connection or my internet connection gets a little bumpy, or you have to ask Maya for a little bit of help to figure some things out, all we need to do in those moments that can lead to an amount of tension and frustration is sit back, take a breath, and say, tequanimity now. We will get through this. We'll come to the other side. So I just want to invite a little idea of tequanimity. So my name, again, if anybody is curious, is Stacy Madden. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I live here in Calgary. And did I say that right? I'm not from Calgary. I had to teach myself to say Calgary instead of Calgary. I grew up in central Alberta and have been here for more than 20 years now. And over the course of this 20 years, I've gone from being a pretty movement-oriented yoga and meditation teacher to now being a registered somatic movement educator with a pretty broad focus in trauma and the body and emotional well-being and resilience through movement and awareness practices. And that's what we'll be looking at tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to hit share screen. If this doesn't work for some reason, take a deep breath, tequanimity now. We'll check in with Maya, but there we are. These will be available on the WTM website afterwards. And you are welcome, if you decide to download this package or look at it later, if you have questions about anything that we've kind of skimmed over or that we've practiced, you're more than welcome to contact me. My websites, my emails kind of listed all over the place, and I would be happy to answer any questions. Yeah, so welcome. I'm just going to let that settle in a little bit, that idea of being welcome. Welcome to this space and this practice tonight. Welcome to everybody who's here with cameras on or cameras off. In this practice, nothing needs to be hung up at the door this evening. We're often conditioned to, walk into perhaps our workplace and hang our emotions or our feelings up at the door and zip ourselves up and conduct ourselves in a certain way. In these practices of somatics, which is about the body and the body-mind, everything about you is welcome. Everything that you consider worthwhile and beautiful and terrific is welcome. And everything that you worry about or think is unworthy, that's also welcome. All of that's welcome. So your mind is welcome. Your thoughts are welcome. The positive thoughts, the negative thoughts, as we've decided to apply that. Your memories are welcome here. Images are welcome here in this practice. Neurotypical brains are welcome here. Neuroatypical brains are welcome here. Your body is welcome here, your full body and all of its beauty and its bumps, its form, its function. Your body is welcome in this practice tonight. Your emotions are welcome. Your feelings, your moods, your inner experiences are all welcome here this evening. And there's not many places in my experience where emotions are fully welcomed in. In mindful somatic wellness, your emotions are a part of your body and they're a part of your experience. We consider and talk about emotions as being energy in motion. We kind of break that word apart, meaning that our emotions, our feelings are a felt state in the body that wants some sort of directionality in order to be understood and complete and integrated and processed. So just take a moment here. You're invited just to reflect on that everything about you is welcome here this evening. Nothing about you is unwelcome. And how does it feel to know that everything about your experience, everything about you, is welcome to be in this practice? As Ram Dass used to say, it's grist for the mill, meaning it's more information to grind down, make subtle, and understand. So mindful somatic wellness is considered embodied emotional support. So what I offer is an interdisciplinary bottom-up approach, meaning from the body up to the mind, where we integrate sensations and memories and thoughts and perceptions and our environment. It's really sort of a path to something we call embodied cognition. And although we've sort of parceled these things away from one another, they're really a single human experience: thoughts, perceptions, emotions, moments, memories, intertwined inexplicably and importantly with the world that we live in. And I like to recognize that every being is capable of reorganizing to something more functional, to something maybe even peaceful, when we start to land in ourselves fully with movement and mindfulness practices and breath and awareness. So I'm going to just sprinkle, we're going to dabble a little bit in neuroscience and neuroplasticity, just a tiny bit. I'm not a neuroscientist. You might have notice that you didn't catch that title at the beginning. I'm not a neuroscientist, but it's really important to have an understanding of how our neural functioning, our neurobiology affects how we perceive things and how our body feels things, and how our body perceives things internally and externally and sends messages back up to our brain. So some of you might be familiar with Bessel van der Kolk. He wrote The Body Keeps the Score, does a lot of trauma work. I've had the pleasure of training with him in 2014, maybe. And this is one of my favorite quotes of his: neuroscience research shows that the only way we can change the way we feel is by becoming aware of our inner experience and learning to befriend what's going on inside of ourselves. And from there, we're going to be exploring this evening the felt sense, what's called the felt sense. And it was coined originally by Gene Gendlin, and he's sort of the creator and the founder of focusing-oriented psychotherapy. And I offer somatic inner focusing practices and explorations. And other people have talked about the felt sense. Peter Levine has talked about it. Pat Ogden has talked about it. Other experts in the field of trauma and body psychotherapy. The felt sense is not a mental experience, but a physical one, a bodily awareness of a situation or a person or an event, an internal aura that encompasses everything you feel and know about a given subject at a given time. It encompasses it and communicates it to you all at once rather than detail by detail. So I incorporated a picture of someone listening to music and really enjoying it. And you might look at that photograph if you wanted to, the picture that I've put into this slide. And as we gaze upon this person who is clearly enjoying a piece of music, hopefully maybe it's a podcast or something, but I think it's music, notice how this person's body is situated. There's a lift, but there's an easiness around the shoulders. The smile is big, but the eyes, you can almost tell, are turned inward. There's the sense of the person being inside this experience. And I might invite you here to notice what you feel in your body as you gaze upon this other being enjoying music. You might reflect on how you feel when you hear music. I'm sure a number of you out there are music fans. music buffs, maybe musicians. I hope there's some musicians out there. When we listen to different pieces of music, I don't have them arranged, but we could even reflect on that here. I do this in other classes. Imagine I'm playing right now a beautiful symphony, some gorgeous piece by Chopin or Beethoven, perhaps. And you might even remember, if you're imagining that music, how your body responds. There's a response to it. And it doesn't come with words. We almost have to reach up into our brain to figure out the words that we would describe how we feel when we listen to a symphony or something symphonic. Now imagine I switched the music to some sort of like driving heavy metal rock and roll. I just switched it from this Chopin into like Metallica. Just to even noticing that, even imagining this, your inner sensations and awareness might shift. So something with a lot of guitars, something with a driving beat. How does that make you feel inside? And we're not thinking about judgments like I like that, I hate it. I mean, that floats up too, and it's welcome to be here. But we're noticing more of how certain music styles would make the body feel. What if I switched that heavy metal Metallica music and I started playing some nice flute, something light and like from Peru or something, a nice little bit of flute? Like, how would that change your felt experience in your body? And then what if I changed it to some indigenous drumming? Just the memory, just the thought of me switching music styles, you might be having what could be called like a visceral response in your system. So this is a great example of exploring the felt sense, music through music. We're going to explore, or I might ask you to consider this idea in focusing that we talk about, which is inner processing. And this isn't any type of, diagnostic tool or anything to like really apply to yourself very heavily as like a label or anything. And this is a spectrum. I'm just doing either sides of the spectrum. But one side of this inner processing, so how we understand the felt sense and what it means to us, how we interpret it, one side of this might be called or considered being a close processor. A close processor is somebody who can easily feel sensations inside their body. This is interoception. They know when they're hungry. They know when they're thirsty. They might really be able to pinpoint where a headache is. They might have cold hands and feet. They might really be able to sense their body temperature. Close processors, oftentimes, generally speaking, can identify emotions or memories that go along with that sensation. Oh, my gosh, I'm really hungry. I'm mad I forgot my lunch today. Like, there's some pieces put together. Close processor, someone who's a close processor, processes the felt sense and somatic awareness, can sometimes become easily overwhelmed with feelings. It can be, sometimes you'll hear this term of emotional flooding. There could really, really easily, emotions can shift from one emotion to another quite rapidly with close processing. On the other end of this spectrum, if we could travel, we're going to get the other side. The other far side is being what's considered a distant processor, or distant processing. A distant processor, someone who might be much more comfortable in the realm of thinking about things and reasoning things out. They might need more time to notice inner experiences if you feel like you identify as more of a distant processor. Someone might say, I'm really sad. How do you feel? And a distant processor might be like, you feel sad. How do I feel? They might need to reflect on it a little bit. A distant processor might feel unsure about the nature of emotional responses and the meaning of them, like how they're actually valuable, how they might be potentially valuable, and how to move emotions, that energy in motion, this idea of letting things flow through the body to a conclusion as a way of processing and completing emotional responses all the way out, as opposed to just like maybe repressing or thinking they're not important. So these two extremes, really, they're the end of the spectrum. I'm wondering if you might want to consider where you are. because this is going to tell you a little bit about the practice and felt sense exploration. Do you think you might be more of a distant processor at times? Are you a close processor in some situations and way more of a distant processor in other situations? Do you kind of land along the middle? Just a consideration for you as we move forward with our practice tonight. So inner processing, if you are like, yeah, you know, some people know right where they're like, oh, I know I'm a close processor, or I identify as a close processor. Someone who processes things really close and quickly in the body might really benefit from what we call orienting to external spaces. And we'll practice that tonight through butterfly eyes. Taking some time to sort of create a little bit of space from the internal sensations and be able to look around their environment in a smooth and safe and slow way. Close processors might really need to strengthen exteroception, which is butterfly eyes, external orientation, being aware of their outer environment, and proprioception, like balance, knowing where their body is in time and space. Close processors often report really enjoying and gaining benefit from reinforcing somatic boundaries, like understanding where their body ends and where the environment begins, and how that relates even to emotional boundaries from the body state, from the body level. And they might benefit from slowing down, being able to parse things out and take a breath between thoughts and just allow things to show up a little more slowly. Someone who feels a little bit like a distant processor, who's more comfortable with thinking rather than feeling, might benefit from more inner orienting and interoception. So some practices where you are going inside and noticing feet and legs and hip joints, being in the joints. They're rich with neurotransmitters. Hips and joints are so smart. They have a lot of information to send to our brain. They might really enjoy or benefit from noticing breath practices, pranayama and yoga, or just breathing practices and mindfulness. They benefit from regular mind-body practice. Distant processors really benefit from sort of like a more structured practice, as do close processors. And some exploration about how body experiences relate to emotions. Like, what's the relationship to how we think we feel and how we feel in the body, because our emotions are a bodily felt state. So this moves us into what is resilience, because we're talking about embodied resilience and how the body is a resource to build and create resilience. When we start to understand some fundamental pieces about our own structure, processing structure, distant, close, felt sense, what that means. So you might think right now about some of the ideas you have about resilience, some of the ideas that kind of land up here. What do I think about resilience? What have I learned about resilience? What have I heard about resilience? And in some circles, we talk about resilience as being response flexibility. So being able to, bounce back quickly from disappointment, that sort of thing. Resilience sometimes is the ability to feel settled after maybe an upsetting or surprising event, not being stuck in that flight fight. Being able to anticipate and prepare maybe for difficult moments or hiccups. And also another word that comes up a lot, I've noticed when I talk about resilience with people, is this concept of like perseverance, like being able to work the way through. What other words have come up? Maybe some of you are thinking about like grit. I love that word. It's such a good concept, but like that idea of like having grit is with resilience. And none of these are wrong. I mean, this is all how we conceptualize, cognitize the idea of resilience. But what does this have to do with the body and the felt experience of resilience? So one of our favorite questions in somatic experiencing is, how does your body tell you what you're feeling is true? If someone says to me, like, I'm feeling really angry, I'll say, yeah, where do you feel that in your body? And we bring everything back down to the body level so that we can embody that moment in order to fully understand it, process, and integrate it. So all of these are really like thought-based ideas of resilience. So what's somatic resilience? What's embodied resilience? This idea of being, well-being, being here now. When we talk about somatic resilience, what we're focusing on is growing our capacity for living day to day with change. So just really letting that kind of float and settle into your system, into your body, into your tissue, growing capacity for living with change. Boy, we might collectively really need this right now. And growing capacity, like, what does that mean? It's this idea of the body being regulated enough in our nervous system to respond in that flexible way on the level of our digestive system, our heart rate, our circulation, our circulatory system, our fascial network, this connective tissue throughout the body. So we're looking for a way for the whole body to be present, to live and move with change. Somatic resilience is about awakening self-healing or self-organization, internal organization through connection. Through connection. Somatic resilience is about being in service in some way, shape, or form to our communities and to the greater earth body, to the planet that we live on. Somatic resilience can start at either end, but it incorporates the individual, the community, the lived community, and the environment, the planet that we live on, and how those are all interconnected. So a little bit different, a little more heartfelt, about somatic resilience than a concept, words. So embodied resilience really is connection with yourself, your body, mind. In somatics, there's not a lot of differentiation between those two, or sometimes we refer to it as mind, body, and our emotional state. It's connection with the family, and it's connection with the larger world. And I love that picture that goes with it, like there's some happy, soulful connection. Resilience is relational. Resilience is about relationship with our inner state and with our external world. I won't spend a lot of time on neuroplasticity. You might have heard some about it. You can read the slides. Mindfulness practices encourage neuroplasticity, this growth of the actual structure of the brain, the synapses of the brain, and our ability to have a lot of different pathways in order to understand and experience life, external life and internal life. Experience is the catalyst for neuroplasticity. I see a spelling mistake there, I apologize. Neuroplasticity and learning for our entire lives. So we can always, always, always encourage neuroplasticity to create more pathways through the mind and the body. And we can choose experiences which encourage more neuroplasticity. This is one of my favorite quotes by Dan Siegel, Dr. Dan Siegel from the Mindsight Institute. Inviting our thoughts and feelings into awareness allows us to learn from them rather than be driven by them. So feeling thoughts and emotions in our body allows us to befriend them and validate them rather than being chased by them or chasing behind a river of emotion. So what interrupts our ability to engage with mindfulness? Because I know some of us out there are like, I try, I don't know what it means. And what interrupts our ability to increase neuroplasticity? What stops us from fostering resilience? How do we find those blocks? It could be our nervous system. If we're living in a lot of fight flight, I'm sure some of you have heard this idea of survival responses that have gotten us through our lives. If we live in flight, fight, and some of us can live in freeze, shutdown, functional freeze, and full dorsal vagal shutdown. This is a latter idea from Deb Dana. She's a clinical therapeutic social worker who's kind of created this idea of a ladder. Parts of our neural structure sort of shut down so that we can survive a moment. And we don't have a lot of access to a lot of complicated frontal cortex thinking to sort things out. So if we're stuck in a lot of fight, flight, freeze, shutdown, it's really hard to encourage neuroplasticity, which fosters resilience. This is a chart that describes a little bit more about what it feels like in the body to be in fight, flight, and freeze and shut down. And I go into this in much more depth in other ways. But we'll be focusing tonight on the vagus nerve, the polyvagal theory by Dr. Stephen Porges, and the vagus nerve pathway. So when we talk about the nervous system and fight, flight, freeze, shutdown, again, we're lifting up into our head and we're thinking about ideas, which is great. We've been conditioned to do this. I am going to think about this. But our nervous system lives in our body. I heard some of you out there say it. I heard it. I'm sure I did. In our body. Our nervous system, our central nervous system, our autonomic nervous system is a pathway through our system from our fingers to our toes, to the back of our spine, to the front of our eyes, to the tip of our nose, to the back of our, it's everywhere. Polyvagal theory and the vagus nervous pathway really relates to survival practices, survival strategies, and social functioning. So the vagus pathway is consistently, it runs all over the body. Vagus means traveling, wandering nerve. It runs all the way through the body. And part of what the vagus nervous system does is it is interpreting our external environment and our internal environment, and then sending messages back up to the brain saying, I am safe, I am not safe. And then the brain makes all sorts of decisions about how to manage that, being flight, I'm going to get out of here. I hate it. I'm leaving. Fight, I'm going to put up my dukes and defend my boundaries. Freeze, what do I say? Shut down. I just have to go to bed. Total hyperarousal to hypoarousal. So 3 circuits out of the brain stem travel down through the body, enervates our eyes, our middle ear muscles, our mouth, our laryngeal diaphragm, our heart rate, lungs, stomach, gut, digestive organs, pelvic organs, all the way down into our legs. And I like to always sort of share with people that the vagal pathway sends the signals down from the brain to the rest of the body through afferent fibers, so going down, which account to about 10 to 20% of all the fibers, the nervous system fibers in your body. This is like not an insignificant amount. And the vagal afferents, or up from the body, mostly your intestinal wall, as research tells us now, from the gut to the brain, accounts for 80 to 90% of all nerve fibers. So there's a lot of information coming up from the body to the brain. And that's why we want to be in the body. We want to know what the body's doing so that we can make smarter, more skillful choices about what we're experiencing. So how do we engage this vagal pathway? Movement, sound, and breath. Movement, sound, and breath. So now we're at about 7:36, and it might be time for some practice. You don't need to have a yoga mat or a gym membership to do this. You don't need to have any specific or special knowledge to know how to do this. In fact, and I hate to give it away, but most somatic practices are profound in their simplicity. Our nervous system is relatively primitive. Its main function is to help us survive. It's really all it cares about. Are we surviving? Can I limp through another day? For more complex internal human connections, like our frontal cortex and other parts of our brain, that's more concerned with thriving. Like, am I happy? Am I connected? Am I resilient? The nervous system, not so much. But that really helps us, that assists us, because then we can go into the nervous system and actually meet it at its own level without it being very complicated. There are some sort of principles around somatic practices, like loose principles. I'm not a real rule-oriented person. Each human being is so diverse. We have so many different ways to explore these types of things from our own unique perspective. But kind of generally speaking, we want everything to be really slow. We're really inviting slow into ourselves and our practices and our awareness. Slow is data rich. There's so much information in moving slow and slowing things down. We like to do before and after comparisons because our brains, our mind loves before and after. Black and white, good and bad, left and right. You know, we're really neurologically oriented to wanting to contrast and compare in order to understand things. So we like to give our brain more of what it wants to do, which is another somatic principle. We do more of what the brain wants to do in how we feel in our body or how we're thinking, so that it can see itself. We're bringing awareness to awareness. And then usually the brain can sort of complete some things out, find a new baseline, get a little bored with itself. Maybe some of you have a deep meditation practice and you notice how, like, a lot of the thinking mind, when we reflect on it, the ego kind of gets a little bored of itself after a while, right? So we slow things down. We take our time. We do a little comparison of before and after to let the brain do more of what it wants to do in order to understand and compete. So let's practice, shall we? You are invited to wiggle and move. And note too that you don't have to do any of these practices. You could sit and listen. You could do something else. There will be a recording later. But give your body a little bit of a squeeze and release, a little bit of movement here. Maybe you need to do a little stretch or a little bend side to side, or just make yourself more comfortable. Some things around here on my own chair. And isn't it interesting that when we invite a little movement into the body, we don't have to tell it what to do. We're not telling our body, stretch left, stretch right, sit up straight, wiggle, look around. We don't have to tell our body to do that. Isn't that beautiful that when we just allow and give space to become more comfortable, the body will move, our bodies will move in a way that allow us to settle. Something we would kind of bypass or overlook quite quickly, this innate ability to seek small degrees of comfort without needing to have a word associated with it or a thought. You might like to practice butterfly eyes with me, where you maybe look at your computer screen or just slightly behind it, and you might imagine a beautiful butterfly. Can you really allow that part of yourself that is creative, that loves to imagine, that's tied to memory? Can you picture, visualize, imagine a butterfly and give it some detail? How big is it? Is it a big cartoon butterfly? Is it a beautiful monarch? Maybe it's a tiny moth. And really see it. What's the color? And then notice that it might be pulsing a little bit. Butterflies just have a beautiful little slow pulse. They don't move like a mosquito. And this butterfly lifts off in flight really gently, and it begins to float and flutter around the space that you're in. And you let your eyes follow this butterfly. And as your eyes follow, your head turns and your neck might turn and your shoulders might turn. As you imagine this butterfly just floating around your room. In the space that you're in, if there is something in your space that the butterfly lands on that you like to look at, or has a particular meaning to you or special, let the butterfly land there, and you might gaze on that object and notice how it feels just to gaze very softly with soft eyes as this butterfly lands there for a moment, and you gaze at the object. Noticing how it might make your body feel to look at something pleasant, something beautiful or meaningful. And then the butterfly just lifts off and carries on, floats to the top, floats around to the bottom. They go quite slow. I've never seen a butterfly in a rush. Until that butterfly comes and lands in front of you again, nice and slow, where it began. Then when the butterfly lands again, notice how you're feeling. Notice if your breathing has changed. Notice if your body feels different. Is anything different from just letting your eyes follow an imaginary butterfly around the room? Sometimes we'll do this butterfly practice for about 30 seconds, or just until you notice something has shifted in your perception. Maybe your breath changes, it feels a little deeper or slower. You might start to feel a little dreamy, maybe some down regulating to your nervous system, coming down out of a fight flight if you feel kind of revved sometimes. And this is an exceptionally soft and gentle and yet powerful practice for nervous system down regulation, coming from a sympathetic nervous system activation response into something a little closer to calm. Kids love it, but it's so good for grown-ups too. When that butterfly settles and you notice how you might be feeling, take a moment just to rock from sit bone to sit bone if you're sitting on a chair. And you might tip forward and back a couple of times. You might go in circles. And we're just seeking a moment in our body, a place that might be the center of your sit bones. You're not tipping forward. You're not tipping too far back. Just a centered place. There's something almost liminal about it. Something almost just like in between two moments, this centering. And when you've found center, you might gently close your eyes. If that works for your practice, you could keep them open as well. It's up to you. When you found center, you might imagine now a taproot growing down from this centered location in your body. And a taproot is one of those thick white roots, the first thing that emerges out of a planted seed into the earth. It's not spindly. It has form to it because it is rooting down. And as it roots down, it connects and engages into the soil. And then smaller roots grow laterally out of the taproot. And that taproot grows down deep into the earth so that the plant can lift high up to the sun. So can you let your spine just gently lift up as though it's a fresh seedling coming out of the earth and reaching towards the sun. So really gentle lifting through the spinal column, nothing hard, nothing not too much work in the body, just a gentle, almost spiraling, almost serpentine-like lift to the spine. So there's this taproot down and a lifting. And when you are feeling centered and rooted, and maybe just a little more present to this practice now, to this moment, I want to ask you to consider, what gift did you bring with you here tonight? You might be thinking, gift? Was I supposed to bring a gift? What aspect to your humanity do you carry with you everywhere you go? That special thing about you that makes other people feel comfortable with you, or something that you're good at. What's your gift? What do you bring with you everywhere you go? And it could be, maybe some of you already know, you think to yourself, I'm a good listener. I know I'm a compassionate person. Maybe some of you think like, I make a mean pot of chili. That's the gift that I bring with me everywhere. I am really good at that. Maybe it's something somebody has told you. Maybe it was something your grandmother told you when you were smaller, like you have such a beautiful smile. I'd like you to consider your gift that you bring with you everywhere you go. And as you reflect on that gift, what do you feel happening in your body? What might be showing up for you? Is there a relaxing somewhere, a letting go? Is there a thrill, a little bit of a pleasant charge with this idea of recognizing gift? Is there a little bit of sadness? Maybe there's a bit of grief there. You're like, I've never considered my gift before. I'm not sure. Whatever it is, notice what you're feeling in your body. When you've reflected on that, you might bring your awareness now to your breath. Just noticing inhale and exhale. And the invitation, if you so desire, is to just allow the breath to show up exactly the way it wants to, without needing to enforce a style or a type of breath. What if the exploration was simply to notice the breath moving in through the nostrils, perhaps slightly cool as it draws in, noticing the breath as it leaves the body slightly warmer. And the breath change when you let go of how it should be? Does it feel differently when you let go of the need to make it be a certain way? What if shallow breathing was okay? It's almost like I feel like psychic ripples out there, like, what? Yeah, I hear that a lot. Like, I'm a shallow breather. I'm not breathing right. What if every breath you took was exactly the right breath to have? That there is no wrong breathing. There is no wrong inhale. There is no wrong exhale. And when we allow our breath to be exactly the way it is in any given moment, it will shift and change. You might release some tension around that idea that the breath has to be a certain way. It might become more comfortable. A slow inhale and exhale, an invitational way to breathe. And noticing if that changes anything about how you might be feeling right now. Once you've sort of let the breath show up exactly the way it wants to show up, you might invite the breath. What about this consideration? What about this practice? You might invite the breath to be a little slower or a little longer on the exhale. What might that invite into your feeling sense, into your felt sense when you say, oh, what if the breath, would you like to be slower on the exhale? Kind of like a balloon kind of deflating. Connecting to taproot, connecting to center, connecting to breath. You're invited along with me to practice some humming before we move into the next practice. And everyone's on mute, so no one will hear you. But you don't have to do this. You could just listen to humming, or you could imagine yourself humming. Some of you might have a mantra or different sounds that you like to make. When we start to make sounds, you're invited to do that too. But if you wanted to practice with me, I'm going to hum 3 times. I'm going to invite some vibration into my vagus nerve pathway. And I might feel it in my throat or the back of my throat or in my chest. So you could bring a hand to your chest if you wanted to, inviting a little touch support there just to pick up some vibration. You might wiggle again and become comfortable, and we'll hum 3 times. So it's a breath in and a hum out. We'll do a practice now called interrupting habitual somatic patterns, places of tension or even freedom in the body, any type of unconscious somatic pattern that holds us in a state and doesn't allow for us to be fully embodied, doesn't necessarily allow for us to break out of fight, flight thinking or feeling. And we're breaking up some of these somatic patterns like you might tap ice. You know, you're going for a walk and you see that puddle with that little ice over top of it, and you step on it, it makes the most satisfying sound. That's the level of investigation that we're doing within breaking up habitual somatic patterns. We're not going in with like a hammer or something. Because our body stores our emotional state, it stores our tension patterns. And from the body level, unconsciously, those tension patterns will inform our mind of how we think about things. It'll inform our emotional state about how we feel about things. So we're going to explore how movement and sound and breath might be able to release some of these unconscious, below the level of words, somatic patterns. And it kind of starts a little top up, but it is top down, but it really is a bottom up practice. So you're invited to think of something that worries you, not your biggest stressor, a tiny one, just a tiny one. You know what worries me? I might go to the grocery store and they're not going to have the kind of milk that I like. They're going to have that other kind. They're not going to have, they always sell out of that one kind. There's something like that, you know, along those lines, something small. So choose a stressor in your mind and give it a little narrative in your head. Like think about it a little bit. Give yourself just a couple of sentences like I just did. Like, oh, did I put ice on that? Is it icy on my sidewalk? Am I going to have to go out there and shovel it again? Something along those lines. Nothing big, something small. But as you're thinking about this worry, what's your body doing? Notice inside the body how you might be bracing, how the body might be armoring a little bit, tensing a little bit around this worry. Noticing how your breath might show up, your tummy, like how your stomach or your digestive system or your abdominals on the front of your body might brace a bit. Sometimes our glutes brace a little bit, we get a little tight. Sometimes our feet feel tingly. Notice what your body wants to do when you start to drop down to the body level, when you have a worry and you've thought about it a little bit, and then you come down into the level of body. How is my body reflecting and holding this worry? So when you come into that place of the body, you're invited to bring a hand and to make touch contact with where you might be storing it or where you might be feeling it. And some of you might want to imagine, like, if I felt this in my body, where might I feel it? If you don't have a clear felt sense, you might think, if I was someone who felt this in my body, where would I feel it? You can guess or imagine. And then you make a little touch contact with your hand and send some breath to that area. So if it's in your belly, you might be touching your belly if that feels comfortable and safe for you. And then you breathe to and from your belly. And then we're going to send a little sound to that place in the body. Let's do a hum in that area. Hmm. might visualize that area that's bracing a little bit or holding a little bit. What's the shape of it? What's the size? Is there a color? Breathe again to that area. And now, does your body want to move? Let go of all of that. Is there a way that you want to shift or move your body to feel more comfortable now? So maybe you want to keep touching that area. Maybe you want to let go. Maybe you want to kind of roll in and maybe roll out, kind of coming out of that practice a little bit by moving the body. You might look around again. Sometimes it's nice to wobble or to shake. And then, is there a way that you can continue moving and breathing that's inviting you to feel a little more settled with a little more ease? Yeah, so just noticing how your body might be feeling now, or how you might be feeling seated in your chair or on your couch or wherever you are. Where in your body, like inside or outside, somewhere in the joints, like where might you be feeling kind of better right now? Letting the mind sort of notice. And then from the body, we'll just lift up a little bit. What do you think about that worry now? Remember that worry? Do you remember that 3-sentence, I'm worried about milk, or whatever it is, that small worry? Does it feel more distant? Is it still quite present? If it's really present, if we had time, we would do this again and again. You're just noticing. And then how's your sense of presence? Like, do you feel just a little more located in your body now? Do you feel just a little more located in your room? Is there a difference? So if there's a difference, give yourself a moment to notice something's changed. A little something is now different in my experience. And it can be hard to put a word to that for some of us. It can be hard. In somatics practices, we're just looking for little tiny shifts. We're not looking for giant cathartic moments. We're building a little bank account. We're taking moments where our brain can sense it before and after, and we're using that like a golden coin, and we're dropping it into a container. Something has changed. Something is different about my experience. This practice I recommend all the time, over and over and over. And you can practice with small worries and then medium worries, and then some of your larger worries, dropping into the body, moving, sounding, and breath to awaken the vagus nerve to help feel safe. So we're at 8. We'll just do 2 more quick-ish practices, if that's okay with you. Circle of support practice, because somatic resilience, embodied resilience, is relational. So center again, root again, lift again, wiggle again. And your eyes might close if that works for you. And you are invited to imagine a person or a few people or a group of people who make you, who reflect, who you think are safe, who are loving, who are wise. And these could be real people in your life today. These could be someone who's passed. It could be Marvel superheroes. So imagine maybe about 3 of these people, and they're standing behind you, just a few feet behind your chair or in your room with you, and they're facing you. Imagine their faces and how they make you feel, how each one of these people make you feel in your body. Can you feel located and safe and held? These people, this circle of support, you might even invite that they are literally backing you up. They have your back. Can you lean back even physically into the circle of support? Can you let go of having to feel like you have to do this all by yourself all the time? Can you lean back into these people, these beings that support you. You might even notice how it makes you feel to imagine the circle of support and to lean back physically into it. You might even imagine their hands holding your back, holding you up. Take just a couple of breaths right here, really, really absorbing, really, really letting your body relax into feeling held and supported. With this level of external support leading to a sense of internal support, I would like to invite you to notice a place in your body where you feel pretty neutral or pretty good. Locate maybe your tummy or your shoulder. Let yourself be aware of that area, how it feels, how you can kind of rest in this place in the body. And then you're asked to imagine a time when you felt resilient. When's the last time you felt strong and balanced? Think of a moment when you felt most like yourself, when you showed up the most like yourself. Now, if you're not sure if you've ever felt this way, you might imagine a scenario where you would feel resilient. Where do you feel this in your body? How does your body reflect this experience? How does your body hold and let you notice this memory? The last time you felt strong and balanced and most like yourself. And when you've located that area in your felt sense, or you're imagining where you might feel it, take a hand, offer a touch support to that area where your body's telling you, I am resilient, and then breathe into that area. And you might even allow this to flood your whole body, this idea of resilience, this feeling, felt sense of lived resilience, of embodied resilience. And wherever you are feeling this in your body, this embodied resilience, this place of being connected, of being remembered, remember this moment. Remember this moment so that you can come back to this area of your body in times when you're not feeling so resilient, when you need to access embodied resilience. Remember how it feels to touch this area of your body. This will be your touch point. You might let your hand float down. Noticing your taproot, your centeredness, maybe now locating your feet and your toes, your legs, giving yourself a little wiggle. Maybe moving again, inviting some movement. You might want to externally orient, especially if you're a close processor, where you look around the room. And we'll arrive back to this moment here together. And you might really notice what is different. Do you, and you might, this was a shorter practice, but do you feel different now compared to when you first signed in? And how does that feel? What's the felt sense of something has shifted or changed? And you might just feel it. You might not even be able to word it. Does your room look a little brighter? People don't always notice that. Sometimes when our vagus nerve is rebalanced, the room is a little brighter. We actually take in more light visually. We might take our hands and place them together. Maybe looking into the camera. I'll try to look at you, imagining you all out there. You might look at me. We'll bring our hands together. For some of us, this is Anjali Mudra. It might be a hand posture signifying reverence to the divine within and the divine without. I like to bring hands together almost to remember and rejoin the right and left sides of the brain, joining our linear experience with our creative experience, and then sitting nice and tall. You might bring hands into your heart, and I bow. I bow to each one of you tonight. I bow to your embodied resilience that's there. I bow to our collective resilience, our collective connection. And I send a lot of gratitude to each one of you for finding time to be here this evening. I bow with gratitude and reverence to Calgary Public Library and to the Wellness Through Mindfulness group, which is doing and spreading so much good in this world, especially when we need it. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. Deepest gratitude. Stop the share and I will mute myself. Hi, Leslie.
Hello, Stacey. Thank you very much. We have some comments already in the chat. Somebody said, I would simply like you to know how powerful this has been for me, and thanks to all of you. Some thank yous. I feel sleepy and my resilience point is all tingly. So I wondered if you would like to comment on that experience.
Oh, how fabulous. What a nice contrast of sensations to feel sleepy. And I hope that, I'm assuming it's a good sleepy. Sometimes we can feel like I'm wiped out, sleepy and yet tingly. How nice. There's a felt sense. And sometimes tingly to me, and just to me, feels like it's a little bit of energy. Like there's a little bit of like circulation happening there or breath happening there. Yeah, very nice. Thank you for sharing that. How nice. Put a little somatic pinpoint in that tingly space. Remember that when you need it again.
Okay, and then another thank you for someone who found it amazing. And then when do you sit in meditation for the public?
Oh gosh, you mean like leading meditation for the public?
I wonder if that's what it means. I wasn't quite sure, but if that sounds like a good interpretation.
What a good idea. A lot of the classes that I'm teaching right now are movement oriented and emotional balance through movement. Although I do have an office studio space opening up in March, knock on wood. And I hope to be leading more internal practices then. So thank you for the question. Keep a look on my website, subscribe if you want. I don't spam, I barely email anyone. I should get better at that, but keep your eye open and I would be happy to have you when I offer that.
And then another person says that she's very much enjoyed your sessions at Yoga MCC. So to mention, I guess, to put in a plug that Yoga MCC is a place that Stacey teaches, and there's many other helpful mindfulness related topics taught there. And apparently you also teach at the Y, or you used to be, probably pre-COVID.
Yes, and I taught there. Oh my gosh, someone's here from the YMCA. Hi, let's hug. Oh, I taught there for like 10 years, like it's a decade. And we spent time together, a group of us for 10 years, like 3 times a week. So I'm so glad that someone's here. Thank you for being here. I'm warm inside.
And then someone said, some of us find it difficult to approach the body because of held trauma. As part of our mindfulness embodied practice, how do we approach the body when we are in resistance?
Oh yeah, what a great question. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, it can feel really dicey to do deep dives. It can feel really dicey to be in the body. So there's a couple of different ways that if you're curious about being in the body that you can explore and notice. One of the ways is being on the furthest points of the body. So sometimes we feel a little bit safer just holding hands, raising hands, maybe even touching head, maybe touching feet or knees, or just leaning against a chair, like anything external, sort of far away from the central midline. it can be helpful for trauma physiology for us to imagine ourselves beside us, like we're sitting beside ourselves, and just noticing, and maybe even sending awareness into a projected body. Like I'm aware of the back of my heart, for instance, and I'm just thinking about it, but it's over here. We don't even have to directly address internally. And then, I had like a third idea there, but it seems to have sort of slipped my mind. Another way, oh yeah, the resistance piece. So sometimes when we see or feel or interpret resistance, we think that's it, end of story. Resistance tells me to go away. We can be on the outskirts of resistance in the body. We can notice, like, yeah, when Stacy invited me like to notice breath, I got a little tight, resistance showed up. Oh yeah, we welcome resistance too. Like, great, here's the message. It's all important. It's all grist for the mill. It's welcome here. Resistance is absolutely welcome here. And then we might notice resistance from a soft vantage point. Like, I'm just going to notice this resistance maybe from up here. I don't have to dive into it. I can just kind of sit with it. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. And again, another person has said they've studied with you in the past and they're looking forward to your studio opening, your treatment space.
Yeah, a little office, not very big.
Yes. I would like to ask you, I'm also a yoga person, and if you could reflect on the different styles of yoga and how they work somatically. For example, I did a practice this morning that there was quite a bit of strength work, and I know I was feeling somewhat anxious, fearful before the practice, and as I noticed as I like used my muscles, that sense of fear diminished. So that's an example, but there's many different styles of yoga, and if you would like to share with us what we might reach out for when we're having different mind states in the yoga world, what might be helpful to us.
Oh, Leslie, that's so great. Thanks for sharing that. What a great reflection. Yeah, like when we're starting to feel a little bit drained, or we're feeling a little flight, or when we're feeling a little fight, like there's a rev to the system, being in the muscles and the tissue and the joints of the body, like actually activating the system with conscious awareness and breath, can be a really nice way to reinstate that grit, that resilience through the physical structure of the body. So yoga practices that are encouraging a mindful strength practices, ones where we're not looking for a lot of stretch or a lot of pull against the tissue or a lot of long holding stretch when we're wanting to build that like strength feeling in the body. One of the most valuable reasons that we practice yoga or do any type of mind body somatic practices is because we're practicing on the body level what we want to show up in the emotional mental state. So if we want to be really flexible, we practice a lot of flexibility. If we want to encourage a bit of strength in the body, but a bit of presence, we practice something that's a little bit stronger, maybe a little more visceral. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like specific styles. But it would be more beneficial to talk to teachers or get class descriptions from sites. Here's a little tool. Here's tools that I like to use. This is not necessarily yogic-like at all, but for encouraging strength in the system when you start to feel drained or fearful or disembodied somehow, or you're preparing for a difficult conversation. Remember these little like hand strengtheners? These are one of my favorite tools to use. And it's just a slow squeeze and feeling activation through the arms all the way through the pectorals. And then a slow release. So if you're someone who goes into freeze dissociation states, these are really lovely to have close by. Depression, these are really great for like more hypo aroused. What tools are these? These are like, from my memory, these are like from the 70s, and they were like arm strengtheners, like, yeah, I'm going to strengthen my wrists. And they do strengthen your wrists. You can get these at Superstore. I've seen them at Value Village. You can get them at Canadian Tire. They're in like the health and safety. You can get ones that count reps and stuff. But the reason why we use these is because it just really, like, you can see my arms charging up. It really gives you that sense of embodied strength in the body. embodied through your arms, around your heart, your lungs, and then you slowly let go. Just a couple of times, a little bit and often with a tool like this. You just tuck them in your pocket, your purse, your bag, and have a difficult day. Let it go. These tools are some of my favorite.
Thank you. Now we have another question. Do you have any thoughts about somatic awareness and its relationship to the digestive system? I'm thinking of irritable bowel syndrome, in particular, a vague and general diagnosis.
Yeah, I see a lot of people with sort of given that like IBS sticker sometimes, where like they've tried everything, they've tried every diet, they've done diet journals, they've had allergy testing, and still it sort of shows up. And there is, it's not totally robust at this point. I'm hoping it's going to grow, but there is some study and research in polyvagal theory and around how the vagus nerve specifically enervates the digestive system. And so when our vagus nerve there's all sorts of like terms for it, is not toned, is turned off when we're dorsal vagal, which means that it's only functioning kind of below the respiratory diaphragm, that can show up as a lot of grip and release around the digestive tract, the colon, the bowels, the stomach. So we think, and even like in the slides that I showed, that the gut intestinal lining has a ton of vagus pathway back up to the brain. So the vagus nerve is interpreting food and movement, but there's also a ton of vagus nerve pathway that actually like wraps around the digestive system. Like you think of anatomy pictures, they're so pretty. They're all blue and red. And, the actual living thing is quite different inside of our body. So this vagus nerve is even around the outside. And there's even a really important nerve plexus in around that area. And like, without going into too much depth, what that nerve pathway does is if we're interpreting something as being dangerous or unsafe, whether we're eating it or we see it outside of us, this nerve plexus and the polyvagal system does this outside of the digestive tract, like that. It's kind of like would be like what we call a red light reflex, like squeezing in, and then that manifests as a disrupted digestive system. So yeah, there is definitely a relationship. I hope the research kind of grows on that between vagus nerve. So polyvagal practices, humming, moving, breathing, and there's some other ones, can sometimes help to alleviate that, or even just bring more awareness to what's happening in the digestive system.
Okay, thank you. And we have a very important topic brought up here, is long COVID. A person with long COVID. She's very tired, absolute exhaustion at times, no smell after 10 months. She says she knows she needs to get back into gentle yoga more again to help with the joint pain, just can't find the energy most days.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. Like I'm noticing in my body just this, like a grip, like I'm really, really noticing in my own system, hearing that, like, yeah, we don't have a lot of information yet about long COVID, do we? Like we haven't had time to have long studies on this. From a nervous system perspective and what you just shared, like a little tiny bit and often, as humans, we have the sense like, I need to do everything I possibly can all the time to rectify this. But our body, especially if we're still healing, is already really busy, really, really busy. So you might, here's just a suggestion, I don't know, get back to me if this helps you. You might put on live stream a class from like Yoga MCC. You might look up a gentle yoga practice on YouTube or something, and you just sit back and you get really comfy and you listen and you imagine that you're doing it, like a 20-minute, nothing even all that in depth, and just let your imagination imagine you're practicing the yoga practice without even moving the body. And you might be pleasantly surprised. That would hit. If you try that, person out there, I didn't get a name, feel free to email me and let me know how that might feel for you inland. Just imagining.
Thank you. We have another question. What formal mindfulness practice would you suggest to cultivate greater sensitivity and awareness within the body?
Oh, that sounds like a question for you, Leslie. Yeah, I would absolutely defer to Leslie on that one. What would you think about like a more codified mindfulness style?
Well, within the tradition I'm trained in, it would be to start with the breath and then work with posture. Would be to notice your posture, whether it's sitting, standing, lying, or walking, or the posture you're in when you do some exercise. And then to notice what your body's doing as you move about during the day. So basically a daily life mindfulness type practice. If you are interested, this is all being taught by Gil Fronsdal. I put his website, Insight Meditation Center. If you can join at 8, he's going through all these practices one day at a time. So those would be some of them. And then of course the body scan. So going through and trying to be in your body during a meditation, so feeling various parts of the body. And then you could use a practice where you sense what you're feeling and you relate it to the elements. So hardness and softness for earth, as an example, cool and warm for fire. And there's practices like that. So there's some ideas there. Another route into it is to sense your emotions and then see where they are in the body. So your emotions may be more palpable to you than your body sensations, but your emotions do tie into your body. So that could be a route for some people. And another one would be if you're having a lot of thoughts about something, it's usually being driven by an emotion. So try to connect in, okay, I'm really whatever, excited or agitated or, sorry, I'm going the wrong way, because that's the way it usually shows up to me, is I have a lot of thoughts right now and I just can't stop thinking about this. So connecting in at that point and being curious, because those thoughts are being driven by some internal experience. So that'd be another pathway in. I don't know if that's brought up anything more for you to comment on, because this is your area as well.
Oh, I just can't wait to take those classes. That sounds so wonderful. And like a lot of what you just said with the insight meditation, I mean, it balances, it flows back and forth with what we were practicing tonight too, like letting the brain sort of understand things from like one way to another, like hard and soft. That sort of contrast builds that neuroplasticity, which increases capacity, which allows for more embodied resilience, like to hold and be with things just a little bit easier. It sounds like a lovely practice, Leslie.
Thank you. I do have another question I want to ask is I've had some experience with somatic experiencing, and one of the things that's remarkably different about that practice is becoming conscious of held body movements that were blocked at the time of what might be called a trauma. And I wondered if you could comment on that for our listeners.
Yeah, there's such a wisdom in gesturing, like habitual gestures. So in somatic experiencing, like sometimes what we'll do, and it's helpful with someone else to reflect that back to you. So if, for instance, as an example, Leslie, if I'm working with someone or being with someone and there's a lot of like this maybe gesture, like I would say, wow, that's so interesting that your body wants to express what you're feeling this way. And so we'll just slow those gestures down and allow what's sort of being wished to express or being held by that gesture to sort of show up in a really slow way. So yeah, gesturing is a really nice point to free up like tension patterns in the body that live at such an unconscious body level that we don't even know we're doing them. And they show up small gestures, facial gestures. And then sometimes, like even in the picture that I showed of someone listening to music, like pleasant experiences show up as like a body posture too, right? This lifting up to light, or like needing to close down, right? Does that kind of answer your question a little bit?
Yes, yeah, that's very helpful. Someone has commented that they've read that psychedelics may help with long COVID symptoms. So they said, take that with a grain of salt, but you might want to look into that. But don't go to your local dealer, see your doctor or therapist.
There are really great groups of psychedelic psychotherapists here in the city, well trained and well practiced and very easy to talk to. So yeah, if anybody's curious about that, I can always send some group information out to you, because yeah, I mean, potentially, right?
All right. And the next one is, can emotions get stuck in particular places within the body? Do certain emotions tend to migrate to certain areas? You hear about the correlation between anger and heart disease.
Gosh, this one's kind of hard to answer, because it's, you know what it is? It's a hard maybe, like possibly. I sit kind of in the middle of that. Like it can be so unique to each individual how we hold and store emotional states. And yet there are some commonalities. Like, for instance, most of our emotional states are held in the torso. Like we feel it in our gut, we feel it in our heart, we feel it in our back or jaw, like it's held along this pathway. So that's kind of a general sensation. And then we have like sort of human somatic gesturing, like being heartfelt, like we touch here, or sometimes we'll like cover our face, like it's just human globally, we'll have these sort of gestures. But you know how anger might show up and or manifest in one person could be totally different in another person. And it's worth exploring on an individual level.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, we're at 8:30, so I wanted to invite you to give us any closing remarks you would like to give us. And in particular, this has come up for me in just the last few minutes, is there anything you want to say to people that you've seen as being particularly helpful for dealing with this pandemic? That's a huge question, but particularly this stage where we may be opening to fewer restrictions in the coming month. There'll be a lot of uncertainty what's going to happen. There's all sorts of people who've had all sorts of reactions, including driving their trucks to Ottawa and occupying the streets. I personally found it very disturbing, and maybe others have as well. Just these events in the last week, and any comments you would like to include on that, or anything else you want to say as we end?
Like so many, but where we don't have the so many. I really, for myself, feel like a larger moment happening here on a body level is learning to be with discomfort, and to tie into that radical acceptance of whatever shows up in your system. So we're all wildly uncomfortable because we don't have a game plan. We don't have a pathway for this. And a human mind wants to have a plan. That's what makes us feel safe. So we might pull back and say, where am I feeling this discomfort in my body? Like, where am I feeling this moment in my body? And my favorite practice right now, I used to do a lot more like red light, green light, like more prescriptive movement practices. But right now, my very favorite practice is listening to some of the narrative. And then with that practice, you get more nuanced about where you are on that ladder, fight, flight, freeze, right? You get a little more nuance. Like you listen to the narrative, you drop into the body, say like, yeah, I'm really feeling that trucker convoy, like right here. And then you touch and you breathe into that area and you just really love it. Just really love it. Like, I am holding this here. I'm feeling this, whatever it is. I'm not claiming an opinion one way or the other, right? You're just really feeling it and then moving it, getting like comfortable with sort of like these instinctive movements that the body wants to do. It's breaking up these patterns, right? We're kind of breaking up this pattern. We're sounding to it, making humming, chanting, mantra, singing. Oh, singing is so beautiful, to open up that vagal pathway, to get that nerve flowing information, afferent, efferent, all the way. And then settling. doing that a few times. And then the task, like the litmus, is to go back up to the thought pattern, the emotional thought pattern. Am I thinking the same way about that moment? Am I feeling that same way about that idea? Is my body still holding that tension? You might need to go back over it like 2 or 3 times, but that breathing, moving, sounding technique has just been like a dream.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Radical acceptance of discomfort.
Thank you very much. All right, so I have some closing remarks for the group this evening. I would like to let you know that if you haven't signed up for it, we do have a newsletter that we send out and reminders about our events. So you can go onto our website to ask for being included on that. And a reminder that our events are freely offered, but we do have some costs. We do not pay the speakers, but we do have technical costs like the website and getting help from someone to send out our emails and post our videos. So we had a person who's more business oriented help us how to say this. I would never have known how to say this because, as you know, I'm a physician and we never have to ask for money, or rarely. If money's asked for, we get someone else to do it for us. So here it goes. So to continue delivering these twice a month, we do have expenses. As I said, it's not a lot, but the costs are a reality for us. In order for us to keep promoting and sharing the work we do online and in the community, we do rely on donations. If you can, we suggest $5 for an event. And of course, that feels really uncomfortable to me to say that out loud. You'll find a donate link on our website homepage. We're very, very dedicated to supporting our participants and want to keep bringing these events to you. So a little plug for helping us with our costs. So thank you everyone for being here tonight. In particular, thank you to you, Stacey. This has been a wonderful presentation and we have a lot of thank yous pouring in on the chat. You might want to take a moment to look at them yourself. And thank you to Maya and also to Phil, who's our, I would say Phil is our shepherd and our coach. So thank you to Phil for continual support and backup and leadership for WTM. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you. And thank you, WTM. Just one last thing to pop in there. Thank you for doing this. WTM, thank you for putting this together because resilience is relational. This builds resilience. Thank you.
Thank you.